Today's narrative unfolds from the perspective of a young man known to us as Ben. Like all stories that tread the fine line between the ordinary and the extraordinary, we bring his account to you just as it was recounted to us. The veracity of his experience rests in your hands, our valued listeners and viewers, to discern and interpret. Please note that any opinions or beliefs expressed are solely those of the contributor. Our role is to faithfully relay his story to you. And now, without further ado, here is Ben's tale. Hi, I'm about to share a story that might stretch the bounds of belief. In a world rife with chaos and extremism, it's frightening to see how some can lose not just their grip on reality, but also their very humanity. As an engineering student, my life often revolves around formulas and structures, but I'm also a part-time model, which adds a dash of unpredictability to my routine. That summer, I felt a strong urge to break away from the familiar, to seek out adventures that were worlds apart from my textbooks and photo shoots. So I embarked on a cross-country trip during my summer break. It was more than just a journey. It was a quest for new experiences, for stories I could one day tell with a sense of wonder. With just a backpack and a spirit ready for whatever lay ahead, I boarded the bus, eager to see where this road less traveled would take me. The bus journey took me through changing landscapes, each mile introducing a new facet of America's vast beauty. It was a random choice that led me to the Pacific Northwest. I remember waking up from a light doze, feeling the urge to step out and breathe in some fresh air. The driver had announced a short stop at a remote gas station for refueling, somewhere in the heart of Pacific Northwest's sprawling remote wilderness. As I stretched my legs in that desolate yet captivating setting, my attention was caught by a young lady working at the gas station. She had a charm about her, a blend of allure and mystery. Her name was Pat, and she wore a smile that seemed too bright for such a remote place. We struck up a conversation, casual at first, but there was an immediate connection. Before I knew it, Pat invited me to join her for dinner. She mentioned she was part of a community living in remote seclusion. The idea sounded intriguing, an offbeat experience that was exactly what I was seeking on this trip. Driven by curiosity and the allure of her company, I agreed. We left the gas station in her dusty old pickup, heading into the depths of the remote wilderness, towards an encounter that would turn out to be anything but ordinary. The journey with Pat led us deeper into the wilderness, the landscape around us lush with woodlands. We drove many miles. Eventually, we arrived at a secluded plot of land deep in the forests. This was the community Pat had mentioned, a collection of some trailers and a few small, prefabricated buildings clustered together, each one radiating a sense of simple, sustainable living. The community welcomed me with open arms. Their friendliness, though overwhelmingly enthusiastic, felt somewhat unnatural, as if each smile and handshake were part of a well-rehearsed script. Despite this, I was taken in by their lifestyle. As someone deeply interested in sustainability, I found their dedication admirable. They had an almost religious reverence for the natural world, which seemed like a good thing. Moreover, I was enchanted by Pat. Her presence made any doubt secondary. She was passionate about the community's cause, and her zeal was infectious. I found myself drawn not just to her, but to the ideals she represented. It was easy to overlook the oddities around me when I was with her, lost in conversations about our planet and our role as its stewards. In those first few days, I immersed myself in the community's way of life, embracing their routines and participating in their discussions. There was something liberating about being so close to nature, far removed from the concrete jungles I was used to. Little did I know, something more sinister was brewing. The charismatic leader of the community, a man whose presence commanded attention and respect, took me to what they called their sacred place. It was a striking outcrop of rocks not far from where we stayed. There, in the midst of ancient stones under the open sky, I was inducted into their fold. I remember feeling a mix of apprehension and intrigue. The ceremony, though strange, had an allure that was hard to resist, especially with Pat by my side. Her belief in their cause and her dedication to the natural world were captivating. I found myself falling for her, drawn not only to her beauty but also to her conviction. As I stood there, surrounded by chanting and the flickering light of the ceremonial fire, a thought crossed my mind. If rituals are part of what they do, as long as it's for the greater good, then perhaps it wasn't such a bad thing. It was a thought that comforted me, even as I sensed the complexity of what I was getting myself into. I have a more scientific approach to nature conservation, but I convinced myself to respect their strange approach. Those initial 2 weeks with the community, which I had once considered blissful, slowly began to unravel, revealing a reality I wasn't prepared to confront. It was subtle at first, a slight change in the air, a feeling that something was amiss. The warmth and smiles that had greeted me so openly upon my arrival started to feel less genuine, more mechanical, as if they were masks hiding true intentions. Each day, this shift became more pronounced. Conversations that were once light and welcoming now had an edge to them, a guarded quality that made me feel like an outsider. The openness that had defined my early days in the community was replaced with a sense of secrecy, of things being said and done just out of sight and understanding. I noticed small groups forming and hushed discussions held just out of earshot. The community members who had once interacted with each other with ease now seemed to carry a burden, a weight that I couldn't understand. Their laughter, once a common sound in the evenings, now rarely broke the growing silence that enveloped us. This transformation extended beyond social interactions. The daily routines and tasks, which I had participated in with a sense of camaraderie, now felt like rituals, each one carrying a significance that was not shared with me. It was as if the community was moving to a rhythm that I was not privy to, a dance whose steps I hadn't learned. Looking back, it was as if the community was shedding skin, revealing a truer, more complex identity underneath, one casting a dark shadow of something foreboding. As these changes unfolded around me, I found myself increasingly alienated, caught between my affection for Pat and a growing sense of unease about the place I had come to call home, however briefly. The shift in the community's atmosphere was disconcerting, but nothing prepared me for the moment I realized I was trapped. It started with a call from my family. My mother was seriously ill. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew I had to leave immediately to be with her. But that's when I discovered the chilling truth of my situation in the cult. After informing Pat and a few other members that I needed to leave, we shared a quiet dinner. Once we finished, I returned to my room with the intention of packing my things for an early departure the next morning. It was then that I discovered my mobile phone was missing. A frantic search ensued. I scoured every inch of my room, but to no avail. The phone was nowhere to be found. A sense of panic washed over me as the stark reality set in. Without my phone, I was completely isolated, severed from any contact with the world beyond the community's boundaries. Confronting the community members about my missing phone only deepened my sense of dread. Their responses were evasive, their eyes avoiding mine. It was clear they knew something but weren't willing to share. The friendly faces I had grown accustomed to now seemed cold and distant. They claimed the pickup truck was broken and they could not take me anywhere until it was fixed, but that will take time, they claimed. They supposedly had no phones, as electronics were against their beliefs. I tried to leave on foot, but the vastness of the remote wilderness and my lack of knowledge about the surrounding area made it clear that it wouldn't be easy. I felt like a prisoner, held against my will in a place that I had initially perceived as a sanctuary. My anxiety escalated with each passing hour. The isolation of the remote wilderness, once a source of peace, now felt like a cage. The community's true nature was revealing itself, and I was caught in the middle of it. I couldn't shake the feeling of being constantly watched and monitored for any signs of dissent. The realization that I was not a guest, but a captive, changed everything. I had to find a way out, not just for my sake, but for my mother's too. The truth hit me like a bolt of lightning on a clear day. It came from Pat, the girl I'd grown so fond of. She revealed to me the horrifying truth about the community, a truth that turned my blood cold. The community was not just a group of nature enthusiasts. They were extremists, a sect devoted to the earth spirit. Their beliefs had morphed into something dark and twisted. Being trapped by a crazy sect was bad enough, but it was about to get a whole lot worse. Pat explained with trembling lips that the sect believed in human sacrifice as a way to appease nature. I was shocked. Apparently, they originally started as well-meaning individuals concerned about the earth, but under the influence of their radical leader, their concern had morphed into a fanatical religion. They saw humanity as a blight upon the earth, a cancer that needed to be cut out. In their warped view, sacrificing human lives was the ultimate act of devotion to nature. They saw themselves as the test case for this new religion, which one day they wanted the entire world to adopt and have people exterminated on a large scale. For the present, the killings are merely ritualistic, but in the future, when they plan to go mainstream, culling of humans will be on an industrial scale and focused at those who won't adopt their religion. And it still got worse. A third shock was the revelation about their choice of sacrifice. While sacrifices are still merely a ritualistic practice, they will give nature the best they can find, and in their minds, they narrowed it down to handsome or attractive people. The sect believed that attractive people were the most fitting offerings to nature, symbolizing the beauty of the planet they worshipped. My presence there wasn't a chance encounter. It was orchestrated. As someone who does modeling, I obviously stood out. Pat confessed that the sect had been using her to lure young, handsome men like me for their rituals. If she failed to find a suitable candidate, the least happy person in the community would be chosen, because lack of happiness in their mind indicated lack of enlightenment by the earth spirit. That's why everyone was initially so overly friendly. They were all acting, vying to avoid being selected. But with my induction ritual signaling the leader's approval of me as the next sacrifice, their pretenses had dropped. The weight of her words was crushing. The realization that I was marked for a grim fate left me reeling. But amid this revelation, Pat's eyes conveyed another truth. She had genuinely fallen in love with me. Her confession was not just an admission of the sect's sinister practices, but also a desperate plea. She couldn't bear the thought of me being sacrificed. With the dark revelation hanging over me like a storm cloud, escape was the only thing on my mind. Pat, despite her deep connection to the community, stood by me. She couldn't leave with me. Her ties were too strong, and her departure would raise immediate suspicion. But her resolve to help me escape was unwavering. Under the cloak of darkness, we executed our plan. Pat had gathered information about the community's routines, the guard shifts, and the safest route through the remote wilderness. She handed me a map, crudely drawn but detailed enough to guide me to safety. Her eyes were filled with a mix of fear and determination as she whispered instructions and words of encouragement. The plan was simple yet risky. I had to slip out of my room in the dead of night, avoid the guards who patrolled the area, and then make my way through the remote wilderness, following Pat's map to reach a road several miles away. From there, I could hopefully hitchhike to safety. Every step was fraught with danger. My heart pounded in my chest as I tiptoed past sleeping quarters, avoiding any noise that could betray my presence. The moon was my only companion, casting long shadows that both helped and hindered my progress. The journey through the remote wilderness was harrowing. The terrain was unforgiving, the silence deafening. Every rustle felt like a warning, every gust of wind a whisper of danger. But the thought of what awaited me if I stayed propelled me forward. After what seemed like an eternity, I reached the road just as the first light of dawn broke the horizon. With a mix of exhaustion and relief, I flagged down a passing truck. The driver, a kind-hearted stranger, could see the desperation in my eyes. He didn't ask many questions as he drove me to the nearest town. As I sat in the safety of the truck, watching the remote wilderness landscape pass by, I realized that part of me was left behind. Pat had saved me, sacrificing her own chance of escape, her bravery and the love that had blossomed between us, yet she was responsible for the demise of many before me. How do I reconcile those facts? Returning to the world outside the remote wilderness sect, I found myself at a police station, struggling to reconcile my past experiences. I detailed my story to the officers, from the initial encounter at the gas station to my desperate escape. Despite the incredulous nature of my tale, their investigation began. The police search revealed remnants of the sect's presence, like trailer stands and signs of farming, but no concrete evidence of the community's current whereabouts. There were no human remains, nothing to substantiate my harrowing account. The case went nowhere, and I felt despondent ever since. In the aftermath, I often pondered the experience. The sect's noble environmental concerns had spiraled into a disregard for human life. Their extreme views now alarm me, and I steer clear of such ideologies. As to what happened to Pat, I naturally have no idea, and I don't know if I should care. It's a conflict I have never resolved for myself. Feeling let down by the lack of police action and unable to share my story for fear of skepticism, I hope that sharing it here warns others of the dangers of fanaticism. Sincerely, Ben. Thanks for watching Ben's story. If it sparked any thoughts, please leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content. What would you do in Ben's shoes? Let us know.